What is your main takeaway on this story right now? What would the FBI be looking at right now?
Good morning, ma'am. I think the priority one are these backpacks and these pieces of evidence that we've seen in that video. Likely the FBI's Phoenix division is in contact with big box stores and retailers in that area and with their corporate security offices to see exactly who may have purchased these types of items in the past several weeks, and particularly of interest if they purchased 2 or 3 things together, if they purchased a ski mask together, if they purchased a backpack together. That's going to help investigators even narrow it down.
What if everything you believed you understood about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance was just the outer layer? What if the truth didn't actually start the night she vanished from her Catalina Foothills residence, but inside a courtroom where her family finally chose to speak? Today, the cameras were not locked on a masked intruder. They were locked on expressions, clenched jaws, measured breathing, eyes that seemed calm, perhaps too calm. And the moment Savannah Guthrie stepped forward, refined, composed, media-trained, something quietly shifted. Was that grief, or was that control? Let's go back. An 84-year-old matriarch vanishes from one of the safest neighborhoods in Tucson. Security cameras disabled. Blood discovered near the entrance. No evidence of forced entry. An Ozark Trail 25L backpack. A suspect described as at ease. At ease at 2 a.m. inside someone else's home. And now, the courtroom. Low whispers, sealed files, motions submitted with urgency. Anonymous insiders suggesting the circle around the family is far tighter than it looks. So now, the question is not only who took Nancy Guthrie. The real question is why every new detail feels like it's leading somewhere people are afraid to face. Stay with me, because this story just took a darker turn.
Are you actively investigating the son-in-law in this case? So there were reports earlier this week and you refuted that. You said you haven't eliminated everybody. Have you eliminated him or come close to it, or are you actively looking at it?
We're actively looking at everybody we come across in this case. Everybody. We would be irresponsible if we didn't talk to everybody. The Uber driver, the gardener, the pool person, whoever, everybody. It's so cliche, but everybody's still a suspect in our eyes. That's just how we look at things and think as cops. Does that mean we have a prime suspect? No, and the family has been very cooperative. They've done everything we've asked of them, and we want that relationship to continue. And sometimes people can be mean out there, and that can really harm us and harm our efforts.
The courtroom did not feel like a place of grief. It felt like a performance. Cameras fixed along the back wall, reporters murmuring, legal teams moving papers with almost choreographed precision, and at the center of everything, the Guthrie family. Annie Guthrie held a tissue, but never once used it. Cameron Guthrie stared forward, his jaw locked tight. And Savannah Guthrie, the media figure everyone recognizes, stood composed in a tailored navy suit that reflected control, maybe too much control. Because this is what made today different. It was not simply a routine status hearing. It became the first moment sealed investigative motions were publicly acknowledged. And when Judge Halpern mentioned an ongoing forensic expansion into peripheral associations, the atmosphere inside the room shifted instantly. Peripheral associations, that is legal terminology. But in plain terms, it means the circle just expanded. And that is where the narrative begins to feel uncomfortable, because until now, the official version has remained simple. A masked intruder, an Ozark Trail 25L backpack, security cameras disabled, blood near the entrance, unidentified DNA, no signs of forced entry. But today, an anonymous source inside the Pima County Sheriff's Department revealed information that completely shifts the tone of this case. Quote, "This was not random surveillance. Whoever did this understood routines that were never public."
Nancy Guthrie was at her home in the privacy and security of her own home. That's the lowest risk environment she could possibly be in, especially a home like this set back from the road and having a good perimeter around it. So that means that to invade that privacy and security, that's the highest risk for an offender. So this is a very high-risk crime on a low-risk victim, which means that the motivation must have been greater than the risk that was taken by this offender. And so motivations are typically money. If that's the case, then it's a kidnapping. If they ask for a ransom, then that would qualify as a kidnapping. Otherwise, it would be an abduction. And other motives could be revenge, some kind of personal ideology, or for sex crime. And yes, even in cases of a victim of this age, there are people who commit sex crimes. So we don't know what the motive is, but we do know that it was very, very high in motivation because they overcame such a high risk. The next thing is the fact that they removed her from the home.
Trail 25L backpack sold exclusively at Walmart. According to retail insiders, and yes, this has been confirmed, bulk purchases of that exact model increased sharply in the Tucson region in late January. Bulk purchases. Who buys tactical-style backpacks in bulk? Camping groups maybe, or someone preparing. And then there is the issue few are willing to confront directly. Tomaso Kian, the son-in-law, publicly cleared, no. Officially charged, also no. Cooperative. According to Sheriff Nanos, yes, but cooperation is not the same as elimination. Nanos stated, everyone remains under review until resolution. Everyone. And when reporters pressed about extended social proximity, he did not respond directly. He redirected, adding, that's not guilt, but it's not comfort either. Shortly after, details surfaced about a sealed affidavit filed under an urgent protective order, heavily redacted, but containing one phrase that slipped through and immediately raised serious questions.
I hope they get the suspect, because I'm not it. They better do their job and find the suspect that did it so they can clear my name, and I'm done. Look at what I'm putting my family through.
You're on national news now.
I just stand. Even my parents in Tucson.
Right.
Yeah.
Secondary access familiarity. That phrase carries weight. Secondary access does not point to a primary resident, not a homeowner, not immediate family. It points to someone who has been there before, but does not live there. Someone who has visited enough times to know exactly where the Google Nest doorbell is positioned. Someone who knows Nancy Guthrie prefers the side hallway light left on after 10 p.m. Someone who understands the delay in the garage sensor. That is not a random offender. That is a familiar presence. And here is what was mostly ignored online. While attention stayed fixed on Thomas Okian, the more important question may have been quietly sitting in the background. Who else had easy access? Who else moved in and out of that orbit without raising attention? Because comfort at a crime scene is not confidence. It is familiarity. And familiarity does not form overnight. This was not chaos. It was coordination. And the preparation may have begun long before February 1st. And that is where the situation intensifies. 48 hours after the courtroom hearing, a document briefly surfaced online and then vanished. Screenshots were taken, stored, and shared across encrypted group chats before moderators removed them. The document was described as an internal FBI memo marked preliminary behavioral assessment. Now, to be clear, it was marked unverified and could have been intentionally placed, but the wording is what triggered concern. It described the suspect as displaying non-urgent environmental movement consistent with prior spatial exposure. In simple terms, the individual did not move like a stranger. They moved like someone who had already been there before. The memo also referenced informal social familiarity clusters plural, suggesting investigators were not concentrating on a single household. They were mapping connections, friends, colleagues, creative partners, frequent visitors, anyone who had entered the Guthrie residence within the past year. Then came another development involving financial activity. According to a source claiming access to records tied to individuals in Nancy Guthrie's outer circle, there were multiple cash withdrawals under $9,000 in the weeks leading up to the disappearance. Withdrawals structured below reporting thresholds. That is not automatically illegal, but it is a pattern financial investigators watch very closely. At the same time, while the family spoke publicly about unity and trust, social media began resurfacing old images, holiday gatherings, backyard events, fundraisers at St. Philip's in the Hills Church. In more than one image, a recurring figure appears just outside the center of the frame. Not family, but close, present, comfortable. Online users began analyzing posture, tattoos, body language, and one phrase started trending again, comfortable at 2 a.m. Because, According to investigators, the suspect was not frantic or rushing. They adjusted a plant to block a camera with the calm of someone casually rearranging furniture. That level of composure suggests confidence, and confidence suggests familiarity. Meanwhile, within Pima County, rumors began spreading that investigators were quietly seeking voluntary DNA samples from extended associates. Not warrants, not arrests, but informal requests, which signals direction without open disclosure. Another detail quickly followed. A Culver's parking lot camera recorded a gray SUV circling twice the night before Nancy Guthrie disappeared. The vehicle was registered to an individual who, according to property records, had attended at least 3 gatherings at the Guthrie residence over the past 2 years. Coincidence remains possible, but in complex investigations, patterns carry weight. And if this was coordinated, then the activity did not begin at 2 a.m. It started much earlier. Now, the silence has grown even louder. According to 2 courthouse sources speaking under strict anonymity, a sealed motion was filed requesting expanded digital geofence data covering a 3-week period before the disappearance, not 3 hours, 3 weeks. That reflects pattern analysis, not reactive policing. Additionally, financial forensic subpoenas were issued outward, not toward the Guthrie household, but toward individuals described in filings as non-resident recurring affiliates. Again, not family, but orbiting. Finally, a source close to the investigation claims analysts identified repeated late-night cellular pings near Catalina Foothills linked to a prepaid device purchased with cash. Activated January 9th, deactivated February 2nd, and then gone. However, digital records rarely vanish completely. And this is where the narrative shifts from crime to strategy. There has been no ransom demand, no manifesto, no public claim, no chaotic escape trail, only precision, control, and silence that signals intent. Savannah Guthrie's courtroom statement, "We trust the investigation," was brief and measured, yet analysts online dissected her body language frame by frame. Sheriff Nanos added further intrigue when asked whether the suspect displayed intimate environmental knowledge. He paused and replied that investigators were examining all proximity-based vectors. That wording does not describe a random intruder. It describes relationship mapping, and that leads to an uncomfortable conclusion. If the suspect was not immediate family, if DNA does not match household members, and if investigators are expanding the scope, then the most critical position in this case may not be at the center, but just outside it, close enough to observe, far enough to avoid immediate suspicion, comfortable enough to stand at a front door at 2 a.m. without hesitation. And if that individual is tracking developments now, they may know something the public does not. Because when law enforcement grows quiet, it often signals progress. This case does not appear to be collapsing suddenly. It is unraveling slowly, pattern by pattern, motion by sealed motion. And when that unraveling reaches its core, it will not arrive quietly. It will be definitive. The question now is whether the most significant development is still ahead, or whether it has already occurred without being fully recognized.